Hey guys, just wanted to do a quick little video here. I've recently done some updates to the CoCo waveform generator that I had created a few years back. For those that haven't seen it, don't feel bad. It's not a widely shared application because it's so narrow in scope for what it does. Essentially, it's a tool that allows you to create complex waveforms for use in any of the various DAC players that are available for the TRS-80 Color Computer. Namely, this one in particular was built out of necessity for working on waveforms for the four-voice FIRQ player that Simon Jonasson and I had partnered on a couple years back. This utility allowed us to create waveforms that we could use in that player because what it does, what the four-voice player does, is it allows you to use various individual waveforms for each voice of the player. So just to give you a quick high-level overview of how the utility works, again, not a lot of people are probably familiar with it. It's creating complex waveforms based on additive synthesis. And all that really means is it allows you to adjust the harmonics, the sine values of a base frequency, and it adds them together to create this waveform table here, which is FCB statements that can be directly copied in to your assembly source. So right now I've currently got it set up where I've got a sine wave preset turned on as indicative of the presets up here, the preset buttons. And as you can see, we've got a nice pleasant sine wave here going from 0 to 1 down to -1 back up to 0. These values here, based on these sliders, create the waveform table here, and the parameters for that are these wave out settings in this box here. So right now I've got it set where we've got a sample size of 256 bytes. So in this particular table, there's 256 bytes. And the reason why we do that is because the waveform of 256 bytes has a natural rollover. So when it gets to the end, it'll naturally go back to the beginning when that index is reset. We're using values between 0 and 63 in this particular waveform, primarily because the way that the four-voice player works, as I mentioned before, it adds all four voices together to create a single byte that is then put out through the DAC. Since we don't want to overdrive that total value, we've got quarter volume waves here, again going from 0 to 63 or 64 values. 64 times 4 channels gives you your 256 byte value, or a maximum of 255. What that allows us to do is create these nice pleasant chords in the music playback, where the various waveforms are layered over the top of one another, creating pretty good sounding music. So in addition to being able to manipulate the sample count and the max table values, also can clip the output. And the way that that works is right now we've got a max value of 63 for the wave table itself. If I wanted to, I could create a wavetable that was half volume by selecting values between 0 and 127, and you'll see the values down here change. Get a little warning that pops up because we should be under 64 for a four-voice player. And the reason why that's important is because down here I've got some test buttons set up that start VCC and start that four-voice player. So if we have values in our table, waveform table, that are above 63, what can end up happening is you'll get clicking or popping or distortion in the music. So it's just giving you a warning. However, if you want to create a wavetable that is half volume, you have the ability to do that. You can also go up to 255 and create a full volume if you're only using one voice in your particular application. You can also change the sample count Right now we've got it set to 256. I can drop that down to 128. Or if you want, you can go down to as low as 16. I don't know if you would really want to go that low with a wave size, but what it'll end up doing is, depending on how you have it set up, you can replicate these values to create a 256 byte table if you really needed to. So I'll go ahead and reset these values here. Go back to 256 and 63, and I'll show you how the clipping works. Down here we have our sliders, and again, these are the harmonics of our waveform. And the way that the harmonics work is you have a base frequency. In this particular case, it's 440 hertz, or on the music scale, it's an A4 note. And this first harmonic is that base frequency, 440 hertz. So as I adjust the slider, you can see that it's adjusting the amplitude of the wave itself. And if we want a full wave, a full amplitude wave, we just put the slider all the way to 1. The next harmonic would be H2, and basically the way that the harmonics work is they're a multiple of the base frequency, and again, in this case, 440 hertz. So H2 would be 2 times that, which would be 880 hertz. And I can show you what that looks like by dropping this all the way down, and if we bring this one all the way up, all of a sudden we have 2 periods in our sine wave, and that's basically doubling our frequency, our base frequency. So in this particular case, 880 hertz. So if we drop H2 and we go up to H3, then we've got 3 periods in our sine wave, and that brings us up to 1320, then 1760, and so on, all the way up to H11. So the other thing that we can do with the sliders is we can adjust sine or cosine, and basically what that's doing is sine and cosine are almost identical, cosine being 90 degrees out of phase with sine. So if I hit the sine button, it'll change to cosine, and all of a sudden we've got a cosine plot there. The other thing that you can do is you can change the value as a plus or negative in the additive portion of that harmonic to the wave, the total wave, and it'll just basically invert it. So there's our invert cosine plot, there's our invert sine plot, and there we go. However, what we can do is we can adjust all these different sliders to create our complex waves. Or complex wavetable. So if I come over here to H11 and start bringing this up, all of a sudden you'll start to see ripples. So you can see the base frequency here of 440 hertz, but then when you've got, it's almost like functioning like a carrier wave, where you have these variations in the amplitudes along that carrier wave. And that creates different harmonics, different tonal qualities, and the overall output of the wave, the sound output. And you can see as I'm adjusting these values here, it's adjusting what our wavetable actually looks like. So one of the things that you might have noticed is as I've dragged these sliders up and down, all of a sudden these 2 red lines appear. And the red lines are there to indicate that this wave is clipping. So basically anything above this 1 and anything below this -1 are going to overdrive our wavetable. They're going to create values that are greater than what we want for a maximum. However, those aren't going to show up in our wavetable because I have the clip output turned on. And that's going to clip anything above those values and basically clip it at 63 as our maximum, or negative, or in this particular case it would be 0. So it would be 0 to 63. So essentially what it'd be doing is just shearing off this top and this bottom. And again, as I mentioned, it would just create tonal qualities that are going to produce clipping or clicking and popping and distortion. If I turn this off, you can actually see that this is now red because we do have values in our waveform that are going to be higher than what we desire. So I typically leave this on. And then the only other thing that we have in the wave out settings is the ability to switch our FCB statements and our hex from lowercase to uppercase. I prefer lowercase. Some people prefer uppercase. That's why it's there. So I'm going to go ahead and reset this wave. And we'll go back to our preset, the sine wave. Again, nice pleasant sine wave. We've got our sound output set to 440 hertz. And then what I've got is a built-in oscillator into the utilities, so you can see what the synthetic sound waveform sounds like. And this is at a sample frequency of 192K. So it's a pretty pleasant sound. So it's just a basic, simple sine wave, 440 hertz. And as I adjust sliders here, you can hear what those do to the actual output of the waveform. So you can hear the ringing in the sine wave that the harmonics introduce. That one's got more of a buzzing sound to it. But again, it gives you the ability to generate all these values on the fly, and hear what the different tonal qualities sound like. So I have additional presets here in addition to the sine wave, so we can hear what a square wave sounds like. And the square wave here, it's a harmonic square wave where it's not just true on-off. You can actually see waveforms at the top and bottom, and it just gives a more pleasant tonal quality to the sound than a pure square wave. Triangle wave is going to be a bit softer. It's just kind of almost like a percussive type waveform, but it's there just to add a different tonal quality to the music if you so desire. Sawtooth is going to be gritty. You got a little buzz sound to that. Trapeze is going to be more of a square wave, but closer to a true square wave than the actual square with the harmonics. Kind of a violin sound. There's no envelopes here. Again, it's just waveforms, so you're not going to get a true instrument sound without that sound envelope. Organ is very classic sound for the TRS-80 Color Computer. A lot of the old music, four-voice music from way back in the day, use this as a bass waveform. And this goes way back to the days when Hal Chamberlain had his Byte article that was talking about creating waveforms for the purpose of recreating music on 8-bit computers. And impulse is just a spike wave, kind of has a little bit of buzzy sound to it. But we'll go ahead and turn this off. We'll go back to sine wave. One other thing I can show you too is that when we have the sound going, we can adjust the frequency, go up the scale, and we can go down the scale as well. So this will reproduce, some frequencies that are outside what the color computer can do, but it's just there in case you want to use it for whatever purpose you might have. So we'll go ahead and turn this off. And we'll get down to the functionality that I had added this past weekend, which is really nice because it gives you the ability to hear what these various waveforms sound like on the color computer through emulation. And it's partnered with VCC. So all three of these buttons would launch an instance of VCC using this particular waveform and various capacities. So this first button is test tone, which is going to take this frequency of 440 hertz and reproduce that on the color computer. So we'll go ahead and click that. And there's VCC playing back at 440 hertz using that waveform that we have here, which is our sine wave. There's a visual down below showing the 256 byte waveform values, and it's just there to just give you a kind of a sense as to what those values look like in ASCII format. So we'll go ahead and close that. If I want, I can bump this up to a higher frequency, and we'll hit test tone again. And again, showing you, that frequency that we just selected, playing back on the CoCo. Next button is test scales, and what this basically does is just takes you steps through the music scales, and I believe I have it set where it'll go from C2 up to B6, which is 5 full octaves, so 60 notes in total. So just gradually stepping up using the sine wave, and again showing you the 256 byte waveform values. So go ahead and close that. And then the last button is test tune, and it'll play a musical selection using this waveform. Again, it's 4-voice, but it's using the same waveform for all 4 voices. And it's Country Roads, which is, I picked this because it's quintessential color computer tune from way back in the day. One of the first 4-voice music selections that I had ever heard on the color computer. Was actually completely blown away at the time, fell in love with 4-voice music. But the other thing too is it has longer note durations, so you can really hear what those waveforms sound like, and also uses a lot of chords which really show and demonstrate the harmonics of the individual voices. So go ahead and close this, and I'm going to select a different waveform here. And just so you can hear the difference, we'll go to test tune again. And much different sound using the square wave. A little bit harsher. I mean, there's a lot of upper and lower transitions to the waveform, so it's not going to be as pleasant as a sine wave. One that really will hit home is the organ. Like I said, this was used way back in the day for 4-voice music on the CoCo. And it sounds pretty darn close to the Country Roads that I remember. Tempo might be a little bit off and the waveform might not be identical. Using this tool to create the waveform, and it might not match completely with whoever created the tune back in the day. But it gives you a sense as to what the different waveforms sound like with the music. We'll go to Sawtooth again. It's got that real buzzy, gritty sound to it. And one thing I did want to emphasize is, again, this music selection is being played with the same waveform for all 4 channels, all 4 voices. But the way that the FIRQ player works is it allows you to assign a separate channel or separate voice or waveform to each channel of the music, which gives a pleasant sound to the music, hearing all those chords, all those harmonics, all those individual waveforms matched together. So again, this tool is to create those waveforms, and if you want to use it for 4-voice playback or 2-voice playback, or even 1-voice music playback, single channel, you have the ability to do so by adjusting the wave settings. So lastly, I will say that, again, I just did some updates on this over the weekend, dated today, March 3rd. So might still be buggy. If you have any issues or run into any problems, you know where to find me on Discord. Shoot me an email, or wherever you have the means to get me. So that's it for now, and good luck with it. Take care.